Three young researchers from the university went to a large and remote swamp. There they will research water and several other living organisms. But their activities are hampered by something terrible and stalking them. One by one they are killed until none are left. At the beginning of the film, there is a woman named Rhea, a student who is conducting research on living organisms, especially water. Actually, Rhea does not want to be a scientist or researcher. She did this only to postpone the marriage she did not want because her parents arranged it. Rhea's plan is to conduct research quite far from the city. Rhea will be accompanied by her colleague named Ben and one of the young students named Will. It became Will's first research in the wild, so he had to learn a lot from Rhea and Ben. The journey has begun. Using their car, they started out of the urban area and headed for a location that they said had almost no cell phone signal there. A few hours later, they arrived at a stop to refuel the car. While Ben and Will went to the toilet, Rhea got a little bit of a disturbance by a local man. The man mocked Rhea and her friends as one of the sources of problems in remote villages like this. They conducted research that ended up taking natural resources there. Rhea defended herself, but Rhea was still just a helpless woman when faced with men. Rhea then paid for the fuel she bought and continued their journey. The local man made Rhea's mood bad, as if she was not enthusiastic, but Ben and Will comforted her. Finally, after traveling for several hours, they arrived at the research location. Because it was already night, they set up a tent and rested. The research only took a short time, so they had to use the time they had as much as possible. Rhea invited Will and taught him a few things about taking samples, while Ben would quickly examine the samples at the tent location. When night was almost here, it would not be complete without horror stories. So Ben told a story about a swamp man who he said would look for prey. It is said that the swamp man was in their current location, but the story was just a legend that no one could prove. Even his photo never existed. Rhea and Will returned to look for water samples quite far from the tent location. Then they met a local man at the stop. The local man with his wife and dog were hunting wild boar, but Rhea felt that their actions violated the applicable rules. There should be no hunting around here. Unfortunately, Rhea's words would not be heard. Even the local man threatened them. Rhea took some photos of the local man as evidence when needed. Then they moved away from there. When they returned to the tent, Ben did not tell any more horror stories. Maybe he ran out of stories. Not long after that, Ben decided to go to bed early while Rhea and Will were still awake. A few moments later, Rhea seemed to see something around the tent, like a man. But Rhea couldn't find him. Maybe it was just a small animal that happened to pass by. And the next morning, they saw the head of a wild boar and the remains of the campfire they made. And Rhea's small camera was also missing. Rhea was sure this must have been the work of the local man, but they didn't want to suspect anything. It could have been a wild animal that stole it. Rhea and Will returned to look for some samples. When night fell, they returned to the tent and relaxed. Ben decided to go back to sleep early while Rhea and Will were still chatting. The chat made them more intense until they ended up going into the tent together. But that night, Rhea had a nightmare, as if someone was strangling her. Rhea woke up in the morning to see Ben busy with his campfire. Suddenly, Ben asked Rhea to come back early. Ben didn't seem to like seeing Rhea's closeness with Will. It turned out that Ben knew what Rhea and Will were doing last night. Ben just didn't want this research to be disturbed because there was a romance between them. Rhea and Ben had a light argument. Then Will appeared and asked what their agenda was today. Rhea would go look for samples alone. Rhea made that decision so that Ben wouldn't be upset seeing Rhea with Will. When Rhea was looking for samples, she experienced an incident that scared her. It was like something was stalking her around her. Every time Rhea moved, it was still like something was following her. Was it a wild animal, or was it just Rhea's feeling? After that, Rhea asked Ben to speed up the research on the samples she took and then quickly left there. It made Ben and Will quite surprised. Rhea looked like someone was scared and had just been terrorized. That night when Rhea was sleeping alone, she was terrorized by a man carrying a knife and destroying her tent. Rhea screamed, but it turned out to be just a dream. Her tent was still good, and there were no knife cuts. Ben and will do the last sampling, while Rhea will wait for them in the tent to examine some samples and get ready to return to the city. Ben and Will have been in the swamp for several hours. Will repeatedly ask Ben, "Are they lost?" Ben, who was annoyed, firmly said they were lost. Who knows what happened? Even though Ben was very sure that this road was the way to the tent. They also found Rhea's small camera that was lost. While Rhea was still in the tent and waiting for Ben and Will to return, then a dog belonging to the local man came. It seemed like the dog had lost its owner. Rhea couldn't stand waiting for Ben and Will too long, so she decided to pick them up and look for them. In the swamp, Rhea heard a whistling sound that was quite loud and long. What was that sound, and where did it come from? While Ben and Will heard a man scream that was loud enough to scare them and run away, until they finally met and reunited. Rhea asked them why it took so long. There was no time to explain. The point is, they were lost. Will then gave Rhea's camera and found some pretty horrific video footage. The footage shows a local man and his wife as if they were hunting something. But suddenly, the camera fell, and there was blood followed by the sound of screaming. Then the local man emerged from the swamp, naked with his hands tied. The man asked for help but was pulled by something. Rhea and the others tried to chase and save the man, until they arrived at a large dry tree with a local man hanging from the tree branch. This was really scary. Rhea and her friends hid because there was a big man carrying a knife and then ate the local man sadistically. As soon as there was a chance, Rhea and her friends ran away from there. Is the legend of the swamp man real? But that's impossible. They hid again from the swamp man until a loud whistling sound appeared, making Rhea hurt. They had to keep moving and not stay still for long. In between, Ben felt like he wanted to defecate. At a critical time like this, Ben shouldn't have done that. And sure enough, Ben was found by the swamp man and pulled to the big tree again. Ben was hung the same as the local man. Rhea and Will tried to lower Ben, but unfortunately their efforts were in vain. The hook was very difficult to remove. Ben asked them to ambush. When he shouted, Rhea and Will had to ambush the swamp man. But unfortunately, when hiding, Rhea and Will were knocked unconscious by the swamp man, while Ben was eaten alive. Rhea, who woke up first, tried to find Ben, but she realized that Ben was gone. Rhea also saw the swamp man's face up close. But Rhea couldn't do anything but hide. Rhea was like someone who had lost her mind. Her gaze was blank, as if there was no more hope for life. Rhea returns to Will. Will thinks Rhea is dead. Luckily, they are still together. Rhea wants to invite Will to keep moving and run away from these swamps. Will is not sure, especially since these swamps are like a maze. What should they do? Their stamina is also drained. Even the compass doesn't work there. But if they don't move, they will be very easy to find. Many times they try to get out, they still return to the same location. This will never end. The swamp man knows their whereabouts by smell, so Rhea tries and Will tries to distract the swamp man with a little trick. The trick seems to trick him, but Will is bitten by a poisonous snake. Will won't last long if he isn't taken to the hospital, until finally Will is caught by the swamp man. While Rhea continues to struggle alone to get out of the swamp, then she sees a way. Did she succeed? Rhea sees Will and Ben are fine. Is this just a hallucination? Yes, Rhea is just hallucinating. Rhea was pulled by the swamp man into the swamps when the sun was setting. And until then, no one has ever survived the swamp man.